Imagine living a life where cameras follow your every move, but the real drama isn't what viewers see on television. It's what happens when the lights turn off, when doors close, and when truth quietly echoes through the voices of your own children. That's the story unfolding around Martell Holt right now. For years, he shaped an image of a charming father, a businessman, and a man fighting for his family. He smiled for interviews, dressed the part, and said all the right things in front of the cameras. But what if the truth was never on the screen? What if the truth was sitting quietly in the hearts of his children, waiting for the moment they were brave enough to speak? And what happens when those voices finally speak? Not for fame, not for attention, but simply because they've carried silent pain for too long. This moment, this story, is not just about a reality TV star and his public reputation. This is about what happens when truth breaks through image, and when children, the very people you thought would always protect your secrets, decide that silence is no longer an option. Because this time, the reveal didn't come from social media, not from interviews, not even from court papers. It came from the children. And once their words fell into the open, nothing would ever be the same again. Martell Holt wasn't always the man people now talk about with raised eyebrows and uneasy expressions. There was a time when he was seen as the charismatic, ambitious father from Huntsville, successful, good-looking, seemingly devoted to his family. He and Melody were admired, a young, attractive power couple building businesses, raising children, and showcasing what looked like a perfect life on Love and Marriage Huntsville. Their brand was built on unity, on partnership, on showing the beauty of building an empire as a couple. People rooted for them. They weren't just characters on TV, they represented possibility. They represented Black love, entrepreneurship, and resilience. But what people didn't see was that behind every camera angle, behind every staged family photo, behind every carefully chosen Instagram caption, there was a growing crack in the foundation of that empire. Melody felt it first, not through rumors, not through screenshots, but through emotional distance. Something was changing. The man she once saw as her partner began slipping into something else, something colder, more distant, more guarded. The laughter faded. The conversations became shorter, and then the truth began leaking, slowly, painfully. Affairs, lies, denials, broken promises, shame, reconciliation, repeat. And when Melody couldn't take anymore, she left. And suddenly, that perfect television family portrait shattered into pieces right in front of America. The audience watched as Martell's life spiraled into drama. Child support battles, public arguments, courtroom struggles, accusations, interviews, emotional breakdowns, and a desperate attempt to hold on to the only thing that could restore his image, his children. But here's where it gets deeper. Martell understood one thing. Even when fans stop believing, even when castmates turn their backs, even when your ex moves on, if you have the children, you still hold the power of perception. People will say, he must be a good dad, the kids love him, and that's exactly what Martell held on to. For a while, it worked. He posted smiling photos, shared little clips of playtime, gym workouts followed by motivational quotes about fatherhood. He tried to paint the picture of a devoted family man, but these weren't the moments that mattered. The real truth wasn't in the smiling photos. It was in the quiet moments, moments without cameras, moments without filters, moments where the mask wasn't needed. What nobody expected was that one day, the children would become old enough, not just to feel the truth, but to speak it. It happened so naturally, so unexpectedly, that at first, people didn't even realize what they had heard. During a live video, one of the children made a small remark. Nothing dramatic, nothing scripted, just a quiet, innocent line, but it struck like lightning. The child said something that hinted at more than just co-parenting issues, something that hinted at emotional chaos, something that hinted at nights of confusion, tears, and tension, something that sounded like pain. It wasn't an explosive confession. It wasn't a shocking accusation. It was worse, because it was real. It was raw. It was a moment that didn't feel like TV. And once that moment spread across the internet, people started asking questions. Why did that child say that? Where did that comment come from? Why did Martell's face freeze the moment it was said? And most importantly, were these children silently carrying the emotional weight of their parents' battles for years? That was just the beginning. More clips began appearing, short conversations, things said off camera, a few words shared during filming, observations they made about which parent showed up consistently and which one didn't, which parent created peace and which one brought chaos, which parent protected their emotional space and which one turned it into a stage. Slowly, a picture began forming, not through allegations, not through court documents, but through the quiet honesty of children just trying to understand their world. This wasn't about custody anymore. It wasn't about who pays child support or who gets more filming time. It was about emotional safety. And people started realizing maybe the real story was never about Martell versus Melody. Maybe the real story was about how their children experienced it all. Some insiders claimed that the children were becoming increasingly aware of how their lives were being used, not just on screen, but in real-life negotiation battles, that they felt like they were being mentioned when needed, photographed when convenient, and protected only when the cameras were near. One child reportedly said, "Mom protects us even when nobody's watching. Dad protects us when people are watching." That sentence, that heartbreaking contrast, it didn't need court evidence. It didn't need legal interpretation. It was pure truth, spoken through innocence, drawn from experience. And suddenly, this story stopped being entertainment. It became real. People online started debating, is Martell fighting for his children or fighting to protect his image using his children? Because image is powerful, but it's also fragile, and nothing breaks an image faster than the truth, especially when the truth comes from those closest to you. Insiders noticed a change in Martell too. He began posting less about fatherhood. He seemed more defensive, more sensitive to comments. Fans saw it, the cast saw it, even Melody saw it, and for once, she didn't need to say anything. The truth was speaking for her. What nobody expected was that through all of this, it wasn't Melody who exposed Martell. It wasn't the cast. It wasn't the media. It was the children. Not because they wanted to hurt him, not because they understood the spotlight, but because truth eventually finds its way out, especially when children are involved. Reports began circulating that during certain scenes filmed for the show, the children were visibly uncomfortable, not because they were shy, not because they disliked filming, but because they felt something was off, something felt staged, something felt performative. Children might not know legal language, they might not understand manipulation, but they know what love feels like, and they also know what doesn't feel like love. And that was the real exposure. Not a leaked document, not a dramatic courtroom scene, but a slow realization that the truth was never about what Martell said, it was about how his children felt. And right now, the world isn't asking, is Martell winning? They're asking, are his children okay? There's something deeply emotional about watching children grow old enough to understand the world they were born into, especially when that world is filled with cameras, controversy, and conflicting narratives. These children didn't ask to be part of the storyline. They didn't ask to be symbols of fatherhood or co-parenting. They just wanted peace, stability, maybe even silence, the kind that doesn't come with questions, captions, or opinions. The emotional toll of this has been heavy. On Melody, we've seen strength, but we've also seen exhaustion. You can fight rumors, you can fight legal battles, but when your kids begin expressing hidden pain, that changes everything. Martell, too, has been affected, though not in ways he expected. At first, he thought consequences would come from judges, fans, or executives. He never imagined that the deepest consequences would come from the very people he believed he could always count on, his children. Not because they turned against him, but because they simply started telling the truth. And that kind of honesty doesn't need sides. So where do we go from here? Will these secrets change public opinion? Maybe. Will they affect the custody case? Possibly. But the bigger question isn't about court dates or television contracts. The real question is, when the cameras turn off, when no one is asking for interviews, when social media grows quiet, what kind of father remains? Because true parenting doesn't live in Instagram posts. It doesn't live in interviews. It doesn't even live in courtrooms. It lives in safety. It lives in trust. It lives in what your children say about you when you're not in the room. Martell Holt is now facing something much deeper than public backlash. He's facing a moment of truth. A moment where image cannot protect him. Where charisma cannot save him. Where silence from his children has been replaced by honesty. Now, he must decide, will he finally change, truly, sincerely, for his children's emotional well-being, or will he hold tighter to the image, even if it costs him the one thing he cannot rebuild through branding, their trust? Because once your children stop protecting your image, nothing can bring it back. Not money. Not fame. Not television. Only truth. And truth, as we've seen, always finds a way. So what happens next? Will Martell finally step away from the stage of public perception and step into the real world? The world where his children simply want a safe father, not a perfect one? Or will he keep fighting to control a story he's already lost? Time will tell. But for now, one thing is clear. His children have spoken. And when children speak, the world listens. And as we reach the end of this emotional story, it becomes clear, this was never just about custody battles, public arguments, or reality TV drama. This was about something much deeper. This was about children growing old enough to speak their truth, not through interviews, not through gossip, but through quiet, honest moments that revealed more than any headline ever could. Martell always believed he could hold on to his image, as long as he showed the world he loved his kids. But what he never expected was that one day, those same kids would become the mirror that reflects who he is, not when cameras are rolling, but when nobody's watching. Because real parenting isn't about performing love, it's about living it. The most powerful truth in this entire story isn't the drama, it's the lesson. Children don't remember fancy speeches, Instagram captions, or public promises. They remember presence. They remember peace. They remember who protected their hearts, not just their names. And now, the world is no longer asking, is Martell winning? They're asking, who is he when the cameras are gone? The truth has been spoken, and it didn't come from lawyers, bloggers, or cast members. It came from the only voices that truly matter, the children. And that is where the real story begins. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep, emotional breakdowns of celebrity stories, the truth behind the headlines, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this story, it isn't over. It's just getting started.